Unit 4, Chapter 10 through 13. Chapter 10, Gospel Licks and Fills. In contemporary gospel, instrumental accompaniment may consist of piano, organ, drums, bass, guitar, horns, synthesizers, and full orchestra, etc. But in traditional gospel, in its early stages, it consisted solely of piano and organ accompaniment and maybe a light percussion, especially with selected soloists and groups. There were exceptions, however, and also in the holiness churches. But in non-Pentecostal churches, instrumentation was not widely used. So we're going to talk about a few of the fills that are used in gospel. They're too extensive, but this is just to develop your vocabulary. You learn these fills and you mix them together until you get a wide vocabulary to use in your various circumstances. Chord repetition mainly means the repetition between the 1 and the 4 chord, or 2/7 chord. It's adds stress, rhythmic movement, and etc. Example 84, page 60, in volume 1, between the 4. And notice I didn't go with root position. Remember we talked about inversion. And first inversion primarily because of, there's our parallel 6, but between the 1 and the 4. So, chord repetition between the 1 and the 4. So, see what happens there. Jesus lifted me, 84B, is the same thing, it's just in another key. And notice I'm not playing the melody line. That's for the vocalist or the congregation. I'm so glad Jesus lifted me. So glad Jesus lifted me. I'm so glad Jesus lifted me. Etc. So that's how that works with chord repetition between the 1 and the 4 primarily. Waterfalls. Waterfalls are used extensively in traditional gospel. If you notice Amazing Grace, it was used all throughout that piece. And it's just a characteristic sound of traditional gospel. And their descending chordal arpeggios play rapidly in between phrases, starting with the top of the note of a given chord and descending downward. The left hand plays the chord in block form, an octave lower or so below the right hand. So example 85. Etc. See what happens there? Sometimes it's quick. Not too quick, you don't want it to sound corny, but etc. Now the blues scale, we talked about that on page 63, 86A blues scale, 86B minor pentatonic scale. All these things, the licks that resolve from these types of scales, 87A, 87B, 87C. These are all derivative of these scales, the blues gospel licks. Turns, you have turns. And the left hand, resolve. You're always gonna, the trill, or you have, that's one of my favorites. So that's a Jeffersonism, kind of. I like that one. those are just different fills that they add variety to the piece. Example 87A and 87B, this is page 64, use upper and lower neighbor tones called turns and trills. These turns and trills are used to add suspense to certain passages of a song. See that? That's what that is right there. The octave right hand and left hand licks, we use that a lot. You heard that a lot in Amazing Grace, that blues lick. And you can hear that in that original version of Lord Help Me to Hold Out. James Cleveland, he used that, Lord Help Me to, da, ba, 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 ba. He used a lot of that in there. Those things, same things there. That's the same thing. Octave doubled and both hands can be very effective. That's example 90. So you have that 5 going to that 1. Example 91. You have a combination of the blues scale on the right hand and the chromatic scale on the left hand. And you hear that on various charts. That's a gospel lick there. That's a standard gospel lick. Glissandos, of course, you know, glissandos. If you're in a key, the key of D flat, G flat, or many of those, it could be very effective, you know, the whole, or it hurts that way sometimes. But on the white keys, it's more effective. I use those are used sometimes. It just depends on the mood of the piece and the moment. So feel free to use glissandos at any time. At the appropriate time, I should say, not any time. Anyway, suspensions. Suspensions are common in both contemporary and traditional gospel. They're used in anticipation of the dominant as well as at the end of songs, and they can lead to the dominant also. Example 92A. See that? And another one. See that? There's your suspension, etc. So that's what's going on there with your some of the licks. There's so many of them that you can choose from, but learn these and then you can add to your vocabulary.